Grandma's revenge was actually kind of brilliant. Grandma Eleanor's house always smelled like lavender and trouble. Not the burning the kitchen down type of trouble, but the simmering under-the-surface family drama kind. It was Thanksgiving, 2017, and the air was thick with both the scent of roasting turkey and the unspoken tension between my Aunt Susan and pretty much everyone else. Susan, bless her heart, had a way of making even the most innocuous conversation about Chad. Her golden boy, my cousin Chad, a finance bro who thought he was God's gift to women and the stock market equally. He was currently regaling anyone within earshot with tales of his latest deals while subtly flexing his Rolex. I was trying to navigate the minefield that was the gravy boat without making eye contact with Chad when Grandma Eleanor grabbed my hand. Her skin was papery thin, her grip surprisingly strong. "Liam, dear," she whispered, her voice raspy, "can we talk? In the library?" The library was her sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions, comfortable armchairs, and a faint smell of old paper and wisdom. I followed her in, instantly feeling a bit calmer. "What's up, Grandma?" I asked, settling into a worn leather chair. She sat opposite me, her blue eyes, usually bright, clouded with worry. "It's Chad, Liam. He's been asking about my finances." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He keeps saying I'm getting older, that I need help managing things. He's been pushing me to sign over power of attorney to him." I sighed inwardly. This sounded like classic Chad, always looking for an angle, a way to profit. But Grandma Eleanor was sharp as a tack, despite her age. "Grandma, you're still perfectly capable of managing your own affairs. Just tell him no," I said dismissively. "I did," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But Susan, she's been pressuring me too, saying it would be easier for everyone, that I shouldn't be so stubborn." Aunt Susan. That explained everything. She'd always favored Chad, convinced he could do no wrong. I still remembered the time she'd blame me for Chad breaking her favorite vase when we were kids, even though I was on the other side of the room when it happened. "Look, Grandma, I'll talk to him. He's probably just trying to be helpful in his own Chad-like way." I hated that I was downplaying it, but I honestly didn't think Chad would actually do anything. He was arrogant and entitled, but outright stealing from his grandmother seemed a bridge too far. I was wrong. So wrong. Fast forward a few weeks. I was back in my tiny apartment in the city, trying to focus on debugging some particularly nasty code, when my phone rang. It was Grandma Eleanor. "Liam, darling," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I did it." "Did what, Grandma?" "I signed the papers. The power of attorney. For Chad." My stomach dropped. "What? Why?" "Grandma, you said you didn't want to. He wore me down, Liam. Susan too. They said it was for the best, that I was being selfish. I couldn't take the nagging anymore." Her voice broke. "I feel so stupid." "It's okay, Grandma," I said, trying to sound reassuring, even though I felt a knot of dread tightening in my chest. "We can fix this. I'll come over tomorrow and we'll talk to a lawyer." "No, Liam," she said quickly. Not yet. I don't want to cause a scene. Just keep an eye on things, okay? Please?" I reluctantly agreed. I drove out to Oakwood the next day, trying to figure out how to broach the subject with Chad without causing a family war. When I arrived, Grandma Eleanor seemed different. Subdued. Quiet. She barely touched her lunch. I tried to talk to Chad, but he was conveniently unavailable, busy with work. Which, knowing Chad, probably meant he was on the golf course. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing little things. Grandma Eleanor's usually immaculate garden was overgrown. The housekeeper, Mrs. Davison, who had been with her for years, was suddenly gone. And Chad was always there, hovering, answering her phone, controlling the TV remote. One Saturday, I decided to pay a surprise visit. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Chad talking on his phone, pacing back and forth on the porch. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his tone was agitated. As I got closer, I overheard snippets of the conversation. "Needs to be done by next week. Yeah, I know it's a lot. Just get it done. Don't worry about her. She won't notice." I felt a surge of anger. Who was he talking about? And what was he trying to get done? I confronted him as he hung up. Who were you talking to, Chad? He jumped, startled. None of your business, Liam. Just business. Business that involves my grandmother? He scoffed. Look, I'm just taking care of things for her. She's getting old, you know. Someone needs to manage her affairs. And that someone is you, lining your own pockets. The words were out before I could stop them. His face flushed red. How dare you? I would never do anything to hurt Grandma. Really? Because it sure looks like you're running this place now. Where's Mrs. Davison? Why is the garden a mess? And what were you just talking about on the phone? He glared at me. You're just jealous, Liam. Jealous that I'm successful and you're stuck in some dead-end tech job. I clenched my fists. I wanted to punch him, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Just stay away from my grandmother, Chad, or you'll regret it. I turned and walked away, my blood boiling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, wondering what Chad was up to. I decided to call Sarah, my girlfriend. She was a lawyer and had a knack for seeing things clearly. Sarah, I think Chad is trying to scam my grandmother. I explained everything that had happened, from the power of attorney to Chad's suspicious behavior. She listened patiently, then said, Liam, this sounds serious. Power of attorney can be a dangerous thing if it's in the wrong hands. He could be draining her accounts, taking out loans in her name, even selling her house. Selling her house? He wouldn't dare. Don't underestimate him, Liam. You need to get proof. Document everything. Check her bank statements. Talk to her neighbors. See if you can find anything that shows he's acting against her best interests. That's exactly what I did. I started spending more time at Grandma Eleanor's, ostensibly just visiting, but really I was gathering evidence. I befriended Mr. Henderson, her next-door neighbor, who told me he'd seen Chad bringing in contractors to assess the property. I discreetly checked her mail, finding copies of loan applications and notices from the bank, and I started backing up her computer just in case. The evidence was damning. Chad was systematically stripping Grandma Eleanor of her assets. He'd transferred large sums of money to his own accounts, taken out a second mortgage on her house, and was secretly planning to put it on the market. One afternoon, I found Grandma Eleanor sitting in her garden staring blankly at the overgrown flower beds. I sat down beside her. Grandma, I said gently, I know what Chad is doing. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I knew it, Liam. I knew I shouldn't have trusted him. It's not your fault, Grandma. He manipulated you. But we're going to stop him. I promise. It's too late, Liam. He's already taken everything. I'm trapped. No, you're not. We're going to fight back. We're going to get your power of attorney revoked and expose Chad for what he is. I contacted Sarah, and she put me in touch with a lawyer named Thomas. Thomas was a no-nonsense kind of guy who specialized in elder law. After reviewing the evidence I had gathered, he was confident we had a strong case. We can file a petition to have the power of attorney revoked based on undue influence and financial exploitation, he said. We can also seek a temporary restraining order to prevent Chad from selling the house or further depleting her assets. We filed the paperwork immediately. The legal process was slow and frustrating, but we were making progress. We got the temporary restraining order, which meant Chad couldn't sell the house. But he was still in control of Grandma Eleanor's finances, and he was making her life miserable. He'd moved into her house, ostensibly to take care of her, but really, he was isolating her from her friends and family. He controlled her phone, her mail, even what she watched on TV. She was a prisoner in her own home. The final straw came when I found out Chad was planning an open house at Grandma Eleanor's. He was going to show the house to potential buyers, pretending that she was moving to a smaller apartment. He was going to sell her home out from under her. I knew I had to act fast. Sarah and I spent the next few days working tirelessly with Thomas, preparing for a showdown. We needed to get the power of attorney revoked before Chad could sell the house. On the day of the open house, I felt sick with anxiety. I didn't know what to expect. Would Chad try to fight us? Would Aunt Susan make a scene? As we drove up to Grandma Eleanor's, I saw cars lined up down the street. Chad had really gone all out. There were balloons, signs, even a caterer serving hors d'oeuvres. I took a deep breath and steeled myself. Okay, Sarah, let's do this. We walked up to the front door, where Chad was standing, greeting guests with a smug grin. "Well, well, well," he said, seeing us. "What brings you two here? Come to admire my handiwork." "We're here to stop you, Chad," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Stop me? From what?" "Showing off Grandma's beautiful home? From stealing from her, Chad. From manipulating her. From trying to sell her house without her consent." His face flushed red. "You're crazy, Liam. Get out of here before I call the police." "Go ahead, Chad. Call them. Because we have a court order temporarily suspending your power of attorney. And we have plenty of evidence to show that you've been exploiting my grandmother for your own personal gain." I handed him a copy of the court order. He stared at it, his face draining of color. This is ridiculous," he stammered. "It's a mistake." "No, Chad," I said, my voice growing stronger. "The mistake was you thinking you could get away with this." I turned to the people milling around the house. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need your attention. This man, Chad, is not acting in my grandmother's best interest. He has been systematically draining her assets and is now trying to sell her house without her permission." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Aunt Susan rushed over, her face contorted with rage. "How dare you, Liam? How dare you embarrass my son like this? He's just trying to help your grandmother." "Help her by stealing from her, Mom?" I retorted. "By isolating her from her friends and family? By trying to sell her home?" "He would never do that," she screamed. At that moment, Grandma Eleanor emerged from the house. She looked frail but determined. "Susan," she said, her voice surprisingly firm, He did all of those things, and I'm ashamed to call him my grandson." Chad looked at Grandma Eleanor, his eyes pleading. "Grandma, please, don't listen to him. He's lying." "No, Chad," she said, shaking her head. "You're the one who's been lying. You've been lying to me, to your mother, to everyone." She turned to the crowd. "I want all of you to leave. This open house is canceled, and I want Chad to leave my house, now." The crowd began to disperse, murmuring and shaking their heads. Aunt Susan continued to rant and rave, but no one was listening to her. Brenda started screaming at Chad about how he promised her a share of the profits. The police arrived shortly after and escorted Chad off the property. Aunt Susan followed, screaming obscenities at me and Grandma Eleanor. The next few months were a whirlwind of legal battles and family drama. We officially revoked Chad's power of attorney. He was facing potential charges of elder abuse and financial fraud. Aunt Susan was ostracized by the family. Even Uncle Mark finally stood up to her and threatened divorce. Grandma Eleanor moved back into her house, and I helped her put safeguards in place to prevent something like this from happening again. She hired a new housekeeper, reconnected with her friends, and started tending to her garden again. One evening, a few months after the open house fiasco, I was sitting with Grandma Eleanor in her library, sipping tea. "Thank you, Liam," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You saved me." "You saved yourself, Grandma," I said. "You were the one who had the strength to stand up to Chad." She smiled. "Maybe, but I had a little help from you. And from Sarah." She paused, then said, "There's something I need to tell you, Liam. Something I haven't told anyone else." I leaned forward, intrigued. "Chad wasn't the only one with a plan," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I suspected he was up to something from the very beginning." "You did?" I said, surprised. "Of course, I'm not as senile as he thought I was. That's why, years ago, I started moving a lot of my assets offshore into a trust. The money he got his hands on was just a fraction of my wealth. I wanted to see what he would do, and how far he would go." I stared at her, speechless. "You mean, this was all a test?" She chuckled. "In a way, yes. A test of character. And Chad failed miserably. But why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed you to believe that I was vulnerable. I needed you to be angry enough to fight for me. And you did, Liam. You did a wonderful job." I shook my head in disbelief. My sweet, seemingly frail grandmother had been playing Chad all along. She'd turned the tables on him in a way he never saw coming. "So, what are you going to do with the money in the trust?" I asked. "I'm going to donate a large portion of it to the local community hospital, and I'm going to make sure you're taken care of, Liam. You deserve it." I smiled. "Thanks, Grandma, but you don't have to do that." I want to. You've earned it. Grandma Eleanor's revenge wasn't just about getting her money back. It was about reclaiming her agency, about standing up to bullies, and about showing Chad that arrogance and entitlement don't pay. And it was, without a doubt, the most brilliant thing I had ever seen. It was also a lesson in never underestimating an old lady with a plan.